Hey, it's Candy. Did you know that I have a quiz to help coaches choose their niche? Yeah, I do. It's super popular and it has been taken more than 20,000 times. This is a fun quiz that takes you about 2 minutes to do, and it will probably give you way more clarity on choosing your best coaching niche. So now, whether you say niche or niche, it's going to work for you. And if you're a coach and you have been stuck in niche indecision, wondering what to do, then you should take my quiz and find out what you learn. You can take the quiz today at coachnichequiz.com. That's coachnichequiz.com. Okay, let's dive into this week's episode. Welcome to She Coaches Coaches. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and I'm going to help you find the clarity, confidence, and courage to become the coach that you are meant to be. If you're a new coach, or if you've always wanted to be a life coach, then this is the place for you. We're going to talk all about mindset and strategies and how to, because step by step only works when you have the clarity, courage, and confidence to take action. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. I have another expert guest for you. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you ever feel like you're growing up with your children right alongside them as they grow up? Or maybe you haven't always been the parent that you want to be. If so, you're going to really enjoy this conversation with Dinalynn Rosenbush. Dinalynn is a parent coach that specializes in how to communicate with children. In her work as a speech language pathologist, she's gained a deep understanding of how connection is the foundation for our parenting. As parents grow their skills to connect, kids even listen better. Let's welcome Dinalynn to the show. Hey, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Candy, for having me. It's a delight to be here. So glad. Thank you.
Yeah. We've known each other, at least on Zoom, for about 6 months now. And I just thought that, a parenting coach, especially with your kind of special knowledge and skills, is really something that I knew. First off, there's a lot of parenting coaches in my listener audience, but also most of the listeners are parents or are going to be parents. And so you're going to get the benefit either way. Can you tell me a little bit about becoming a parenting coach and what your journey was like there?
Sure. As I worked as a speech pathologist in the schools, I often had parents come to see me, and their children, of course, were getting speech therapy. And so I regularly invited parents to come into my classroom. Prior to inviting the parents to come in, I would see kids in my room and then send them back to their classroom. And they would have to try to remember the skills and implement them all on their own. But these are language delayed kids. So having the parents come in, I noticed that they really improved faster. So I wanted to involve parents more. And then along the way, I started to notice that there are a lot of things that we as parents do that doesn't recognize how children understand. Like, maybe we use too long of sentences. Maybe we have an expectation of what they understand based on what they have done already. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they understand. It means that they've just done it already, maybe by accident, maybe because the words were connected, maybe because part of the words were connected. So I ended up doing a lot of parent education along with the speech and language teaching to those parents. And it just grew, and it just became really, really fruitful. And then I got sick with Lyme disease, and I ended up resigning that position, quitting, being in bed for it was a very long period of time. And then slowly work out of that over a few years. And now I'm getting back into the workforce. And I thought, I really, really always have loved working with the parents and working with the kids. And I wanted to do that still, but I'd like to skip the paperwork that goes to special education. So that was part of the motivation to continue into staying with the communication, but working with parents.
I love that.
That was a transition. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a little bit different approach than any of the other guests have had so far. In that, as a coach, most of the people that I interview, they have one client, but you don't. You have two clients. You've got the child and your work with them and keeping a comfortable atmosphere for them as they learn a new way and keeping in mind their speech delays. And then you've also got the relationship with the parents. So it's almost actually like a three-way. It's like a three-way circle because you've got the kids, you've got the parents, and then you have the family unit together.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have a story for us that you can share just of something that's happened even recently?
Sure. Oh, I've always got stories. So, yeah, one of my parents that I had recently, which was an in-home therapy session. Well, I shouldn't call it therapy because this was coaching. This wasn't speech therapy. These children were the children of two professionals, and one of the parents was multilinguistic. So with one parent, the children spoke one language, and with the other parent, the children spoke English. And the communication struggle that came with wanting to raise bilingual children meant that one parent was always a little bit out of the loop, the English speaking parent, because he didn't also speak Spanish, which was the other language. And so when they asked me to come in, we started talking about how it is that you can communicate with the children in this environment and what it is that's going on. And so one of the days in particular, I walk in and the kids are totally harried. You know, they're all running all over the place. They were hungry, they were tired, and they needed to behave while mom and dad paid attention to me because my focal point has been the parents primarily. And then eventually the kids were just like all over. So I just asked permission to interact just with the kids. And so they said yes. And so as I talked with them and played with them just a little bit, and, you know, you get into that language of play when you understand how children think in that language of play and use words that match what you know that their understanding is. Then we have the children settled down and they climbed onto my lap and I talked with them a little bit. And then what the parents said to me was, I've never talked to my kids like that before. And we got to talk about what it was the difference. And so they recognized that they normally like talk to their children in longer sentences as the adult expectations, when the children are still in that playful mode or that over energetic mode, and how to transition yourself into that mode that they are in to be able to connect and then send them back out to do what you want them to do. So that transition was like mesmerizing. So I was surprised at that because it seemed normal to me. And at that point, I started realizing, what is it that I actually do? So I started asking my kids, what do I do? Because I didn't know what I did differently. And they were the ones that actually identified for me, well, you get into the head of the child and you teach people how to get into the brain of the child. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's super fun. This phrase that you use, the language of play. Tell me more about that.
So if a child is in an imagination state, which is play. And let's backpedal. Sometimes parents think that play needs to be like, maybe we're playing catch, or we're silly, funny, happy, or we're just like haywire. But I'm not talking about play like that. When I think about play, we're going to talk about play from the perspective of it is imagination. It is exploration. It is trial and error. It is just testing. It is wondering. So if you stay in that mindset when you're talking with your child, you realize that if that's the way the children are thinking and they're pouring water from a cup that is one size into a cup that is another size, and it overflows all over the place, the language that you would use was, what happened? That didn't work, did it? What do we do now? Because that's where their brains are at that time. It's not that they're making a mess on purpose to get you upset. It's not that they're trying to get in the way, but their normal operating system as they're functioning in life is with this mindset of, What's that about? I wonder if this will work. What's behind there? I wonder what this is. They might not put it in those words, but that's like the operating system in their brain. So if you enter that kind of thinking when you talk with them and talk back in that kind of mindset, you connect immediately and they can work with you. I can tell you a story of how this happened. One of my students at school was sitting on the floor in the gymnasium. The kids were lining up for the buses and the children were running around and he was sitting down at the wall. And he put his leg out and then he pulled his leg back in. And he put his leg out and he pulled his leg back in. And he kept on doing this. And then pretty soon the teachers or the people that were watching the kids before they got on the bus to leave noticed that he was trying to trip other children. That's the label that they gave it. That is what it looked like. And that is what ended up happening. But I knew this kid. And so I went to see him after school when all of this news came back to me of what had happened. And I said, you weren't trying to trip the other kids, were you? And he says, no. I said, what were you doing? And he said, well, I noticed that there was like a crack in the floor. And I saw that when the kids were running, they rarely hit the crack. So I wondered if I put my leg out, if they would hit my leg or not, because they were never hitting the crack. So then I start talking to him with the other teachers and saying, this is what he said to me. What do you think? And anyway, so the bottom line result is that because I knew this child and I knew that that's going to be what his brain was naturally doing, he wasn't a malicious kid. He wasn't trying to harm anybody, but it 100% looked like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple things that, as you're describing this, it's interesting. I remember, when I used to work in corporate, it was this saying, assume positive intent. And we'd say API, right? And so right off the bat, in that particular story that you just showed, you have an assumption that he was doing something because the result was painful for somebody, that the intention was also painful, but it wasn't, right? And so if we can approach a situation from this assume positive intent, I wonder what we'll find out. So that was the first thing I noticed. And the second is that what you're describing as the language of play is actually something that most coaches, when we take our coach training, we have to relearn, right? We come back to that place. And I don't use the word wonder, but I do use the word experiment a lot. Let's see what happens will often be something that I'll, suggest. What did you learn from that? These open-ended experimental questions, and the feeling that we like to come from is curiosity. And that's exactly what you were describing. So isn't that interesting that as a coach, as a trained coach, what we try to do is recapture that childlike approach, not childish, but childlike approach. And so that's fascinating. Gosh.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. I think that if
me too.
Our mind in that zone as a coach, it takes a lot of pressure away too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, interesting. I want to change tacks on you here for a second. I wanted to ask you this question. And that's because, you and I met originally in a mastermind, and I know that, you were starting your business and all of that. So I know that your experience is fresh in your mind. So the question is, what is one thing you wish you had known when you started on your journey to becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a coach?
There's many things. To whittle it down to one might be a tricky, but I'll say this: to know what I want to know. Like when I looked at the number of things that I needed to learn, it was like throwing confetti on the floor, and I needed to learn all of it. But I couldn't prioritize. What do I learn first? What do I learn second? What matters in what order? And it took multiple coaches before I started forming my understanding of what I need to do in what order. And for me as an individual, I'm probably the greenest person that you had ever seen come into the business world. I've got a deep educational understanding, but I didn't have a broad understanding that would include even business basics or a lot of computer basics I didn't have. So I couldn't prioritize what I needed to learn. So I would say that having someone who would know how, a coach that would know how to get down to the beginner would have been what I wish I would have had at the very beginning. Some way to know what that first, those basic learnings are. But maybe it just comes as dust at you, like maybe that's just the way it is, that it comes sloppily. So that's probably been one of the harder things.
I don't think that, so I remember being a brand new coach, and I remember being brand new to this type of business. And I don't think that it's impossible for a new coach to receive training in business so that they know the right order, so that they can prioritize. I think where we get challenged is in the shiny object syndrome, in that one trainer says do it in this way. Another trainer says, do it in that way. And so a new coach coming in may be listening to 2, 3, 5, 10 people telling them what to do.
I was.
And so, so the first thing is choose your leader, choose your teacher, and stick with them. Find somebody you can trust, stick with them, and have a good relationship so that you know that they're the kind of person where you could ask them any question, and they're going to make sure that they explain it to the point where you actually understand it. Yeah. Business is, I hate to say this because I know that it doesn't seem like this, but business at its core is simple, right? We are people who want to help somebody else. We have something to offer. So who do we help? What are we offering? How do they find out about it? And how do we deliver it? But if you feel like somebody just dumped a whole bag of confetti on the floor, you're not even thinking about how could I help them? What should I offer them? How do I work with them? You're so busy looking for the confetti that you're not even able to look at the client. And that's the most important part, right? Like who am I talking to? Yeah. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I know that there's going to be lots of new coaches who are feeling exactly the way you're feeling.
Yeah.
Exactly the way you felt. But look at how far you've come. It's been like 6 months, right? Look at how far you've come.
Yeah. Yeah. I have appreciated your podcast. That has been helpful.
Oh, I'm glad.
Then, it's been very good. And then, our mastermind together has been very helpful too. So it's good. And now I feel like I much more have a sense of where it is that I'm going. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah. You know what you want to be when you grow up.
If I ever grow up, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let me ask you this question. Again, these are just questions that I come up with, but I'm working on my reading list right now. So the question is, if you were on a deserted island and you only could take one book with you, and it was going to be for a year, what book would it be, and why would you choose that one?
The book that I am currently in the middle of has me totally captivated. And so I'm going to say that book. And that's Joe Dispenza's How to Forget Your... What is the name of it? How Stop the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
The title.
I think it's How to Stop the Habit of Being Yourself. And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Joe Dispenza. Yeah. And that has been like just an amazing brain bender. And it's been wonderful. And I keep rereading different chapters and thinking, wow, I haven't thought like this before. And it's, some parts are familiar, but some parts are like new. And so it's fascinating. Very, very deep work. And I love it. It's very challenging. And so if I had a year, I would know it well.
Yeah, because so much of the work that he does as well is based on a particular kind of meditation. And that really, it's a different approach to creating our life, creating ourselves, creating our self, our self-view as well, right?
It is. Mm-hmm.
All right. You're the
So
first person who said that. So that's great.
that is the current book I'm kind of absorbed in.
How many times have you read it?
I haven't actually finished it. I've read it, and then I've gone back and read that chapter again and thought about it, meditate on it, and then I talk to my son about it, and and then I say, hey, read this and tell me what you think. And then I go back. And so I'm jumping around a little bit, but only in the first 6 chapters so far, because my son and I have had some great conversation about it.
And there's back full circle, right? Connection, conversation, communication with family members to create that relationship.
Yes. And being able to, one of the things that as I've been learning and growing in this, let me back up again, since Lyme disease, that has thrown me face to face with who am I? What are my next steps? What are my values? What do I want? Because I was flat out. I didn't know if I was going to survive or not. So it was a really, figure out what's going on with myself kind of time. And in that, I have learned a lot of these things about myself that I didn't know. And my kids saw me in a tremendously ill state, and we walked through it together. Now, the fact that they were helping me and all of that is the history of our relationship. We have fun and we play together. But there's also this new piece of being able to say to my kids, hey, I learned this today. What do you think about it? And now that they're grown and we can talk like that, it is absolutely fascinating to hear my kids come up with theories and thoughts that are beyond mine, and to be able to learn back from them again. It's like this amazing thing that after you teach your kids, then there gets to be a point that they know some things you don't know, and they start teaching me back. And there's so much joy in that. It's really amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah. And I mean, despite how terrible it is to have had Lyme disease and to have that whole process and the healing that came after, I wonder, I don't wonder, my guess is your relationship would still have been really good with your kids, but maybe not the same level, Right.
It definitely deepened our willingness to think about things we don't understand, not judge it whether it's true or not based on our own understanding, accept what is, regardless of if you like it, and deal with what is, regardless of if you like it, without judging yourself in the process. It's been a huge journey, but it's been a good journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And aren't you something that you can reflect back and say, it's been a huge journey, but it's been a good one, right? That takes intention to make that choice, to frame it in that way.
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah. Journey of courage, that one.
I wouldn't choose it for anyone. I wouldn't choose it again.
No, I understand. And never again will that happen. Wow.
But lots of good did come out of it.
Yeah. Dinalynn, it's been such a wonderful thing to have you on the podcast. I know that there's going to be people who listen to this interview and they really want to come into your world. They want to find out more about you. What's the easiest way for somebody to find out more about you?
I think LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn would be a great place. So look up my name, Dinalynn Rosenbush. I suppose you'll have it there in the show notes for somebody.
I will for sure. Okay. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been delightful to see you again.
Thanks again for listening today. Please hop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Also, I would love to hear from you. Did something that I say resonate? What else would you like to learn about? Click the link in the player and leave a comment on the post. This is going to give me great ideas for future episodes so I can help you best. Join me again next week for more coaching, support, and teaching to help you become the confident coach you are meant to be.